thank you, man, for all that you have done, from seeing everything that you guys have been doing in Dimona, seeing Black self-sufficiency on a global scale. That's something that encourages us here in the States, where it shows that is possible. And then, as well, of knowing who we are according to scripture, that puts a further just icing on the cake. Again, brother, on your page, just from seeing how you break everything down on that historical context, I love seeing that. So, man, I salute all the work that you are doing. And, man, first off, what do you love the most about being a spokesperson for the people in Dimona? What do you love the most about that task?
Well, first, before I get started, bro, it's always, as we do, want to give all honor and praises to the God of our fathers, that great God to continue to walk through, this life alongside us, to continue to guide us through, and to continue to watch over us. So I'll be remiss if I don't. And then also to our elders, whatever my leader Ben Ami, he always used to say to our elders, wherever they may be, in whatever form they may be in. We want to make sure that we continue to lift up their names because it's on their shoulders that we stand today. We have this opportunity to be able to continue, moving through. So I don't want to, do nothing before we get that in. But secondly, I want to thank you also, for, they say when you say so many great things about a person, they say it takes one to know one, and I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing, on the platform, allowing our voices to be heard, allowing, this very critical information to be shared with our people, using your platform, using, your guideline to be able to develop something that is as important as this podcast is and all the other work that you do to be able to continue to feed our people. Because like they say that men don't live off bread alone, So you got to continue to feed their minds, continue to feed their souls, continue to bring things that are revitalizing for the spirit, And so I want to thank you for having this type of platform to allow us to be able to come and to share, this very important news with our brothers and sisters. But what I'll say in terms of, being a spokesperson, being a mouthpiece, being a representative, being somebody who's able to deliver the good news about our people here in Israel. I think one of the greatest things that I have the opportunity to do in that service is to be able to take the great work that our ancestors did here, the great work that our pioneers did here, the vision before me and you came along that they had, that tenacity to be able to get up and to leave America, to leave a place which was comfortable for them. People who had houses, people who had, who had money, people who had what they say part of that American dream, people who had nothing outside of the material world that they would have, needed. I mean, they had everything in the material world, I meant to say, but they still got up and left everything to be able to go and to build a new world that will allow them to now take their destiny into their own hands once again. So we wouldn't now have to, be relegated to second-class citizenship and somebody calling us a nigger, a negro, a coon, whatever else. So we wouldn't have to live under the yoke of what modern-day Babylon have done to our people over so many years. So that we wouldn't have to continue to live through that legacy of what a lot of our brothers and sisters had to endure for plus 400 years plus in America. To be able to allow us once again to be able to speak from the Holy Land and tell the good news about us being able to repatriate, to come back home. When we talk about a lot of those things that are biblical, right? When our grandparents and our great grandparents were out there picking that cotton, they were saying, "Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forward to carry me home." Where was that home they were talking about? We are here now. So my job is easy because all I have to do is just share the great works that my forefathers here did. I'm just allowing, when you're born into something, sometimes you don't really appreciate it as much as you should, right? Because you didn't have to work too hard to receive it. You were born right into it. And so I'm glad as a spokesperson, as a mouthpiece, to be able to say that I'd never experienced a drive-by shootout. I'm happy to be able to say that all of my friends who I grew up with are still alive today. I'm happy to say that I don't really have no friends who are abusing alcohol and drugs and other things. I'm happy to be able to say that a lot of those chronic ailments that our brothers and sisters endure in America, we don't have that. I'm happy to be able to say that as a child, I was able to move around freely within the village of peace until the wee hours of the evening. And my parents weren't worried about that. I'm happy to be able to say that I went to a school that we established for ourselves. I'm happy to say that I was delivered in a birthing center that we created for ourselves within the community. I'm happy to say that I feel good because part of the regimen of the community is that you need to get a massage once a month, a deep tissue, that you need to work out at least 3 times a week, that we have no salt days. So 50% of salt consumption is cut down immediately. So I'm just happy to be able to have that opportunity to share that information with our brothers and sisters. So my job is real easy because all I'm doing is just sharing with them the great news that we have an alternative for our brothers and sisters. And this is the alternative that we have to be able to present. So I think that's the greatest thing that I have, or the greatest honor that I have in representing the community, is to talk about these things that I know are good and right for our people.
Indeed, brother. Hearing that too, man, about lifestyle, that's so important because here in America, sometimes people get stuck in this like rat race, especially our people, where everybody's working so hard, diabetes is extremely high, health issues. And then as well, diet. I see, man, with you guys for decades now, promoting veganism, the highest concentration of Black vegans in the world in Dimona, right? And y'all were way ahead of your time because now, as you know, here in America, especially white people now too,
Right.
everybody's trying to be vegan and healthy, but y'all were already ahead of your time. Why is diet so important for our people?
You see, when we had in 1994, we had a group of doctors come up to assess the lives of the people in the community, right? To be able to understand what is it about the lives of the people in the community that is so distinct, that is so different from our brothers and sisters, but taking people who were on one specific diet before and then transitioned into another diet, and to see what then is the difference. How does that impact your body? How does that impact your mind? How does that impact the environment? And so what we found was that, and what they found was that, like I said, 10 out of 10 of the most chronic ailments that our brothers and sisters endure in America is directly tied to the consumption of meat, eggs, dairy, chicken, fish, and other animal byproducts. And so, if we are able to eliminate at the least a portion of that, that then gives us one, a longer lifespan, two, a more healthy life. I mean, because you don't want to go through life, feeling away, bent over, out of shape, not feeling good, not able to, I mean, because what is life if you don't really have the opportunity to experience it properly? Because you're always going in and out of the doctor's, office, because you're in and out of the hospital, because you need these meds to be able to keep you going. So what is life if that's how you are intending to live it? And so that healthy living wasn't just something that allowed us to be able to revitalize our bodies, but it also allowed us to be able to, because we understand also that food and that biology, that biology, there's a connection between biology and your mind, your brain, right? And what you eat, what you consume, what you put in is obviously, because we always used to say you are what you eat, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're eating a dead animal, then what do you expect to for your body, or how do you expect for your body to respond to that, to react to that, right? If you were eating, if you're drinking milk that a calf is supposed to be drinking, how do you expect then for your body or for the body of an infant to respond to something like that? What do you expect that the mentality of a people who are consuming dead flesh cutting up approximately 30 billion animals per year for the consumption of humans, how do you expect then for you to be able to live in peace? Mm. If this is how we're treating our co-species on this planet, and then you look at it, not only are we looking at the effect that it has on our bodies, but then look at the effect that it has on the environment. We're polluting our own water that we have to drink. We're polluting our own air that we have to breathe. We're looking at scientists saying that the omission of the carbonite gases into the environment is directly connected to the meat and the dairy industry. We're looking at the high cholesterol in the body. We're looking at the obesity. We're looking at all of these other chronic ailments that we're experiencing, and it is directly connected to what you consume. And so with us understanding that there is a direct correlation between what you put into your body and how your body responds to it, we then have to change our diet altogether. Mm. We have to go to a diet that would allow us to be, if we want to live, we need to consume a living diet or live it as opposed to a diet. Right? We need to consume things that will allow our bodies to revitalize, that will allow us to be able to live. And so, the elders in the community understood that. And so they took, and I'm going back to those doctors who would come up and assess the lives of the people who were living in the community, people who were 30 and 40 years of age, and changed their diet in the middle of their life. They were able to assess then that the DNA in their bodies changed and responded differently. In the middle of it, so it's never too late to do it. And so that living model that we've built in Dimona in terms of the connection between the spirit, the soul, and the body, and what type of effect food has on the spirit, the soul, and the body, we understood then we have to eat something different totally. If we want to change our mindset, we have to eat something different totally. If we want to change the environment that we live in, we have to eat something different totally. There's a book that's called The Diet for World Peace. Mm. And in that diet, they say that if you want world peace, you first have to start on the plate. Wow. World peace starts on the plate. When you first understand that you shouldn't be slaughtering 30 billion animals for our consumption a year, then you will be able to understand, possibly I shouldn't be slaughtering my brother. Possibly I shouldn't be slaughtering my neighbor, because there's no difference between a chicken and a dog, and a fish, and a cow, and a sheep, and a goat, and a pig. They all want to live just like we do. But we've taken upon ourselves to decide that their life is not as sacred as ours is. And so what we'll do then, we'll just use them for our good. We'll prepare them for the slaughter. We're not interested in allowing these species to live. And so one of the things that we decided in our community was that we're looking to provide a solution from the human being all the way down to a blade of grass. We want to be able to change the entire paradigm, shift it all together, to shift that mindset so that we can be able to look at things from a different prism. Because up until now, something that we've been doing before we transformed over into this veganism, something wasn't working. Something wasn't working. And so now we have a working model, a solution now that we have tried and we've proven, my brother.
That's beautiful, brother. Seeing you all, especially from the late 60s to now, so much growth, prosperity, it's a beautiful thing to see. Similar to the children of Israel, when they had their own exodus, our people as well, when they first left from Egypt and then had to find their way, of course. I feel like it's so many parallels with you guys, with having to leave and leaving out of Egypt and then, creating your own promised land and going back home, right? What challenges did your people face from leaving in the late 60s, you're talking about from Chicago, that's a major city, to then going to Israel. What challenges did they face during that time?
Let me say, one of the greatest challenges had to be to leave a place that you know so much about,
Yeah.
to leave your friends, to leave the comforts that America had provided to our people. Big home, bunch of cars, money, the luxuries, as they call it, of life. And we didn't come straight to Israel. We went through Liberia. We spent approximately 2.5 years in Liberia to purge ourselves of a lot of that Americanization that we had picked up by being in America for so long, to purge ourselves of that Western mentality that we had that was given to us, to reconnect with our inner selves, to allow our souls to be purged from a lot of what we picked up that was garbage, and then to go into the promised land. See, you was talking about that parallel. The children of Israel couldn't leave out of Egypt and go straight into the promised land.
Right.
Because if they would have left out of Egypt and went straight into the promised land, they would have carried along that entire Egyptian mindset into the promised land. And what they would have done, simply, they would have taken that Egyptian mindset and just replicated it in the promised land. So instead of us doing that, we had to purge ourselves. We had to move around in the wilderness for a little while to make sure that we're prepared. So going from living in Chicago to living in the bush of Liberia, you have so much food growing around you, but you're so used to going to the supermarket. So instead of you picking that food from the tree and eating it right there, you go way across town to the supermarket to buy things that you wouldn't even have to buy. This caused us to have to view life differently, right? We came from being an individualistic, selfish type of people to now having to live communally, right? Where we're all needing now to look out for each other. Before it was, look, man, this is my border. Don't you come past this, right? Now to people being able to just come into your home, take something out the refrigerator, you're not even worried about it. They'll put it back. They'll let you know later on, whatever. To go from you being afraid for your children to be moving around at certain times of night or whatever in certain neighborhoods, because of the drive-by shootouts and because of the kidnappings and because of, so many other things that we've experienced in America, to now allowing your children to move around freely. That took some time for people to have to adjust to those type of things. Yeah. It took some time now to go from you being totally dependent on an external source, now that you're absolutely dependent on yourself. So whatever you're going to make happen, you're going to have to make that happen. There's no handouts. The government is not coming to save you. Nobody outside of yourself is going to deliver you. So now it calls us to be more responsible now for our own fate. It wasn't easy. 400 people left America, but only approximately 100 and something went into Israel. So that means that in that 2.5 years in Liberia, people were like, look, I can't do it. I can't do it. You go from living in a 2-story home in Chicago to a Sears and Roebuck's tent in Liberia, where you have raining into your tent, where you have driver ants, where you have snakes, where the children are almost malnourished. Then coming into Israel, where you were not accepted, where they didn't want you, where you didn't have access to any of the institutions of the country. So then you had to build your own institutions internally. And it took a minute to be able to do so. So it was challenging. Going from living in a home with 5-6 bedrooms for 4 people to 30 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was a challenge. Caleb, it was a challenge. It was a challenge. But they overcame that challenge because they have to be faced with these things in order for them to be able to deliver, in order for them to be able to overcome, in order for them to be able to provide something that will be a real alternative, they would have to go through the mud. Now, when you're talking to these people, these are not people who, went from good to better. These are people who went from good, or what was considered, at least in the Western world, as good, to the worst of the worst, and then built up from there. So the primary challenges were that we had to figure out how to make stuff happen on our own, without a handout, without help, without assistance. We had to do it on our own. Whatever we wanted to see, we had to make that happen. Whatever changes we wanted to experience in our reality, we had to be the ones who brought those forward. Because otherwise, we look to the left, we look to the right, there's nobody there to assist us. So for these 27, 28-year-old people to get up and to leave America,
Yeah.
and go into Liberia, and then come into Israel, the only thing, and this is what my leader used to say all the time, Ben Ami, the only practical thing that we can say in a case like that is that God lives. There's no other way for us to be able to understand how was that even possible, besides the fact that the God of Israel was delivering on his promise to assist us all the way through. Otherwise, that other 100 people who went into the land would have been right back in America afterwards. Because the hardships, not being able to, you have 2-3 oranges that you need to split with an entire family, eating bulgur, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with bugs in them. You having to figure it out. You going from, making what? $50,000 a year, $60,000, $70,000 a year, to not being able to work at all. And you're not at the age where you can be able to get Social Security. So you have to figure it out. You have to figure it out, Caleb. A brother go with 7, 8 children, works for an entire month, and at the end of the month, the employer runs off with the money because he knows that you don't have legal status properly, so there's nowhere you can turn to. So they know that we're not worried about them. Now you have to feed your family. How are you going to do that? It was a challenge. It was a challenge. But I think the beauty of these type of challenges is to be able to actually see that people really went through the mud. They really experienced, the bottom, as they say, right? They really had a hard time. So now when we're on the other side of those hard times, they have a story to tell about what they experienced, and to say to you and to other people that we did it and you can do it too. We had to go. Everybody don't have to go through the wilderness. But because we were the ones who were chosen, or who allowed ourselves to be those people, because I'm sure we weren't the only ones who were thinking this, but everybody wasn't doing it. And I understand why everybody wouldn't do it. So we were the vanguard for our people to be able to show that God is indeed with us. It is possible. There is an alternative. Even though we're experiencing a lot of what we experience, but it still says on the other side of it that we're going to come out victorious. And here is the proof of that. We've managed to do it with all the hardships, with all the, so now today, it shouldn't be nothing for our brothers and sisters to be able to. And we see a lot of our brothers and sisters getting up and leaving America, going to Ghana, some going to Central America, some going to other places in the world, right? But they didn't have to experience, those experiences that we had to. We opened up the way for our people to be able to see now there is a possibility. And so, I say that in all humility. I say that in all humility because not everybody could have endured. Look, I probably would have never endured. If I had to come through that, if the fate of our people was on people like me who was born into this, I don't know where we would have been. I don't know if I would have been able to endure that. And I'm just being very honest with you. I don't know if I can take a woman who's my wife, who's pregnant with a child, from living in the heart of Chicago to Liberia to live in a tent for 2 years without food that's readily accessible, without money, with rain coming through the tent, driver ants, snakes, you living out in the bush. You probably wouldn't have been, if it was up to us, we probably would have dropped the ball. So that's why I give all honor, to our pioneers who had to come through it, because those were some challenging times. But they made it through, and now we have a story to tell today.
Hey, come on, brother. That was a powerful story. And, from hearing those accounts, from having to deal with so many things, right? Think about what Moses, what he had to go through, his frustrations with having to leave, deal with the children of Israel, lay down that groundwork, all of those things. I think about our ancestors who were out in those hot fields all day, every day, and doing things that I know, because man, being here in the South, yesterday was like 96 degrees. And I remember I was saying,
Mm.
man, I can't believe our people used to be out here all day picking cotton, man. So it's just from like hearing those stories from what your people had to go through, man. It's very, very sad. But how should our people, and I would say, man, especially our men of today, deal with having to sacrifice? Because hearing
Mm.
that from your forefathers, what they had to deal with, but they had you in mind, they had us
Yeah,
in mind, and
yeah,
they fought through that. During these
yeah,
times right now, especially abroad in America as well, our people are having to fight back. And now
yeah.
I can see a shift of how people are thinking, how our people are moving. But how do we find peace with having to sacrifice for our children of the next generation?
Our leader Ben Amis teach us all the time about the responsibility of men, right? Because when God created man, he didn't create man alone. That's a misconcept, right? In the Hebrew form, you say that God created Adam, right? Adam was a civilization of people. And then you see later on it says male and female, he created them and then called their name Adam. And so one of the things that says to us, Caleb, is the importance of us working with our sisters together in order to be able to bring forth a new reality. For so long, we had this machoistic idea of how a man is supposed to look, how a man is supposed to be, what a man is supposed to do. And then we relegated the sisters to, to a sidebar, right? But when the Bible says she was supposed to be our help meet, that means that she was supposed to assist us with meeting our destiny. So male and female, he created them and then called their name Adam together as one unit. And so as soon as we, male and female, start to work once again together as one unit, the sisterhood being that feminine energy that's bringing, a different type of outlook on life from a more sensitive, perspective that's dealing more so with the heart. And then the brothers who are, a stronger, idea that's really moving from the mind. And then you put those two together, you have the heart and the feelings, and you have the mind and the thinking, and those things, you working together for a common cause, for a common purpose. You can't lose like that. And that was one of the main reasons why, when you look in the Bible, and it says that Satan was always going after the woman to be able to create discord between the man and the woman, to not allow us to be able to work together to meet our destiny as a unit. And so primarily, what we should be working on now is to strengthen that relationship again with our sisters, so that we could be able to work together for a common cause that could be able to allow us to be much stronger together, as opposed to us being, because when you look at one of the main the main practices, right, of the slave master was to what? Take the male, right, to beat them in front of the female and the children, to cause the sisters to no longer have any faith in us as brothers, because we can't even defend them or defend ourselves at a time where we're being beat. And so they now have to look at the slave master as the one who could be able to deliver for us, because this man is getting beat to just an inch of his life. I can't depend on him when it comes time for me to have to do something for my children and for my family. So I'm gonna put my faith not in him, but in the slave master. I'm not gonna allow myself to be too connected to this person, because I don't know what's gonna happen. Now you separate the man from the woman. You take the woman there, you put the man there. You separate that family construct, right? That will allow us, because what the foundation, the basis of any nation is the woman and the man together as a family. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that man cannot, or a nation can rise no higher than the state of its sisters, right? Of its females. But in addition to that, man nor female could rise any higher than the condition, than the state of the other. And unless we have both to be able to complete one another on each end, we don't have a fighting chance in this world. Because one of the things that this world is looking to is to, and this is what Willie Lynch wanted to do, right? Put the male against the female. We don't want them to work together. We don't want them to be able to put that mind and that heart together to be able to come up with solutions for them. And so the first order of business for us, it should be male and female created he them and called their name Adam. And then, because why? Because it's not good for man to be alone. If that was the case, then he would have just created Adam but it's not good for man to be alone. Why? Because there's some things that we are not wired to do that the females are, that the sisters are. There's some things that we are not capable of doing that the females and sisters are. There's some things that the sisters are not capable of doing that we are. And so when the both of us come together, that's a winning team. And so that's why the enemy put in so much work in trying to keep us separated. The moment we can come together once again and see the importance of us working as a unit, male and female, I think that's the beginning of our rise once again. And so that's something that we had to put a lot of emphasis on in the community. The importance of making sure that the sisters are involved, that they have a voice, that they have a say-so, that they're able to assist us, that they're able to lead in some ways, and we need to assist them.
Yeah.
You see? So, the way our minds have been wired up until now, based on this Western construct, right, that has taken us so far away from our original selves, we have to once again unlearn a lot of these things that we've learned. Mm-hmm. And we need to pick up once again our actual, this happens on the continent all the time. We need to pick up once again, mainly on the continent, a lot of our societies are matriarchal. That means that the sisters have something to provide. They have something to give. And so as soon as we realize that, I think, Caleb, then that'll be the foundation for us to be able to once again deliver, on a lot of things that we hadn't been able to do so up until now, because we've been working separated from each other, from one another. But as soon as we start working together, we could be able to see that the power that yin and yang have. If we're able to come together and to produce one of the greatest wonders of the world, which is a baby, a child, yeah, right? Did you put that seed along with that egg, and then you produce a life? Then how much more can we produce together by putting our minds together and our hearts together?
Man, that's a beautiful breakdown, brother. And going back to that plantation here in the South, man, from hearing grandmother stories or great grandmother stories about sharecropping, it's like people don't realize, like, our people, how close slavery was. But during those times, to your point, whether it was a Harriet Tubman or it was the songs that were being sang, it was always about the children of Israel. And even as a child, I always found that very interesting because they knew. And now, during this time, of course, with more public information and we have the internet and all of that, we have more people who are waking up to the truth. Why is it
Yeah.
so important for our people to know our historical connection to the children of Israel in the Bible, that we are those people that we open up that book and read about? Why is that so important for us to know?
Once you know yourself, you love yourself.
Mhm.
Part of the reason why we are in the condition that we're in now is because the knowledge of ourself is gone. And it's not nothing that happened by chance, right? When we look in the Bible, in Psalms, the 83rd chapter, in the third and the fourth verse, it says that they have gathered together in one consent to what? To cut us off from being a nation, so that the name, so that the nation, so that the identity, so that the civilization of Israel would no longer be in remembrance. They've come together in one consent to do so. Who are those people that we're talking about? We're talking about those that are anti us waking up to the identity of ourselves. When we realize that, when we're looking in the Bible, we're seeing those children of Israel who were going to be taken, as is written in the 15th chapter of Genesis and 13th verse. They were going to be taken into a land that's not theirs, and they're going to serve them, and they're going to be afflicted for 400 years. And then we'll come out, you know. And then when we look in the 28th chapter of Deuteronomy, the 68th chapter, or you could start actually from the 15th chapter going forward, about all these curses that we're going to endure as soon as we turn our backs to the Holy One of Israel. And it's not just turning our, because a lot of people want to make these things spooky, but it's not spooky at all. When we say turning our backs to the Holy One of Israel, that means coming away from those natural inclinations that put us in a cycle of life, to be able to allow us to continue to grow and to develop into the people that we expected to be. That means taking us further away from what our strengths are. That means causing us to fight now in a battle where we don't know if we're winning or we're losing. We're just fighting. That means not allowing us to be able to understand who we are and to take pride in our identity. That means calling us a Negro, a nigger, an African American, an Afro American. So many things that don't mean nothing besides derogatory terms, to be able to keep us further away from our identity. But when we realize, and when we're reading about these people in the Bible, we're not reading about a people that's far away from us. We're reading about ourselves.
Right.
When we're reading about those people who went down into Egypt and then came out, we're reading about, about Joseph climbing up to be the when we're reading about the great works of Abraham, when we're reading about King David, when we're reading about Saul, when we're reading about Solomon, when we're reading about these great giants, it's not talking about nobody that's far off. It's talking about you and me. But we don't realize that. And so the greatness that those people had, and when we look at those people and we revere them for the greatness, when we look at Abraham, and he was an apple, he was God's friend. And King David was the apple of God's eye. And Solomon was the wisest, Solomon was the wisest person to ever live. Yeah. And Moses was talking face to face to the God of Israel. Right? When we're looking at, these giants in the Bible, and we bring them closer to home, it gives us another type of pride, knowing the kind of lineage that we come from. It allows us now to root ourselves in that identity, to allow us. So when it says that I will bless those that bless you and I will curse those that curse you, you walk with another type of umph about yourself. When it says that as I was with your father, so I will be with you, you walk with another umph about yourself. When it says that be strong and of good courage and know that I'm with you, you won't be afraid to walk with another type of umph about yourself. When you're looking in the Bible and it's telling you that after everything you've endured, I'm going to put you back into your land. I'm going to give you all of these promises once again. This is your inheritance. You know that you have something coming. Imagine somebody told you, Caleb, right now that you have an inheritance of a big house, nice car, a few millions of dollars, right? This is your inheritance. This is what you're going to receive. It's documented. Well, we have a culture and we have a land and we have a history and we have a peoplehood and we have an identity, and everybody is fighting to try and keep us away from that. Everybody is trying to claim that. And they're not trying to claim it because it's not worth anything. They're trying to claim it because it's so valuable. And so once we understand the value that we hold as the people of the book, it'll allow us to be able to move different. We'll think different. We'll act different. We'll respond to each other, to one another differently. We won't allow ourselves to be relegated to a coon, a nigger, a shine, a colored person. No, sir. We are the children of Israel. We are the children of God. We are those people who, when you read about in the Bible, we are those people who you're talking about. So it gives you now another type of pride. You walk different. Jay-Z said in his song, he said, my wife's Beyonce. I talk different. Yep. Because when you have something of value that the entire world is looking at in reverence, you act differently. You would know that. You would know that you came from royalty. When you know that you came from royalty, you know what's in your blood. You know who you are. You know what you are. And so you're going to be working overtime in order to restore your inheritance. You're going to be working overtime in order to not let your ancestors down. You don't want to be the one who's the broken link in the chain. Now you got all of these great people throughout the generations, and then here we come. We're the ones that, everybody's looking at like, oh man. But it wasn't like that. The Queen of Sheba came up to Jerusalem to hear from King Solomon. Everybody on the planet were looking at Noah trying to get into the ark. I don't know how you did it, but I need to get in there. It's some stuff that's going on out here that I don't want to be a part of. Hey, Abraham started bargaining with the Holy One of Israel. Said, listen, God, now I know that you're saying you're going to do such and such and such. But if I can find 50, can we talk about it? Can we talk about sparing them? 40, 30, 20, 10, 1? Oh, we can't find one? Going back and forth with the God of Israel. So somebody told me that you just got to submit. You just got to do it. But here you are. The Holy One of Israel is listening to one of your patriarch, your ancestors. And he's bargaining with them and saying that if, then can we do this differently? You take another pride in knowing who you are as soon as when you start reading the book as a historical book, right? As a history of our people, it'll cause you then to reflect on the things that are already in you from your ancestors. You just have to recall those. Call them back. Call them back. Tell them you want those ancestors to come and to protect you and to be there with you, and to you can listen to them, you can feel them, you can see them. You know what's going on. They know what's going on. They could talk to you. They could direct you. They could help you. Caleb, we just don't know. We just don't know. But as soon as we start looking at it differently, we have a land, Israel. We have a language, Hebrew. We have a culture. We have traditions, right? We have a history. We have great matriarchs and patriarchs. We have some folklore in there. We have mores. We have a vast amount of information, of history, of inheritance, that all we have to do is call on it. And we then will be the inheritance or the inheritors of what is due back to us. So, I know I was exceptionally long-winded with that one,
no.
but that was important for me to have to, because as soon as our people know the greatness, the vast greatness of what we possess,
Mm-hmm.
when you know the greatest, you will act differently. You'll be an entirely different person.
That's right.
But we don't know. And they worked overtime in order to separate us from our identity. As soon as we start moving back towards our identity, as soon as we start moving back towards our God, as soon as we start moving back towards those things that always made us a great nation, it was a small people in this area of northeastern Africa that the entire world talk about up until today.
Wow.
Yeshua, that the people called Jesus,
That's right.
was born in Bethlehem, moved around Israel, the Holy Land. He didn't live to about 33 years of age, they say, and he managed to have the entire world today bowing down. This was an Israelite born here. The King David, that's who we talk about.
Yes, sir.
Saul,
Yes.
Solomon, Prophet Samuel, Jeremiah, Isaiah, all of these people. I mean, come on. Joshua, Moses, Noah, Abraham, the 12 tribes of Judah, the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Judah. We have a lot in store. We have a lot in store. But we just have to reconnect.
Man. Listen, it was nothing long-winded about that, brother. That was an exceptional breakdown. And I love that inheritance analogy, of the home, the car, all of those things, right? And as you know, well, and probably better than any of us, what's going on over there right now.
Yes.
You had a great interview. I was, scrolling through on your page, and you checked this white reporter very well, where, he tried to say Black Hebrew Israelite. And one thing that just gets on my nerves is when it comes towards our people, it's always Black first. So it's always Black Hebrew Israelites. But then for everybody else, he's just a Hebrew or he's just a Jew. Why
Yeah.
do you think that everybody wants our inheritance? What makes our story so special that the world wants to claim our identity? But then once we try to step back into that same identity, it's you're not the real Jews, or you're a Black Hebrew Israelite. You're not part of this. Why does everybody want our inheritance?
When you look in the Bible, or when you look in the dictionary, starting from the 15th century, one of the things that they had to do in order to be able to make a distinction between what's good and what's bad, what's right and what isn't, what should be followed and what shouldn't be, is they had to take these two terms, white and black, right? The black is what represented all the negativity, all of the bad. When you are going to a funeral, you're going to wear black. When you are being done wrong, you're being blackballed or blackmailed. But everything that was white was pure, was set aside, was sacred, was good. And then you take these two terms, the representations of colors basically, and you put them onto peoples, right? So that you can be able to now, it's not the color that they're representing. It's the adjectives or the represent what is in these colors as far as they're concerned, the representation of these ideas. This group of people represent what's bad, what's low, what's terrible, right? But this group of people represents what's pure, what's great, what's good. So now you have a group of people who are expected to represent all that's bad. But then when you look at the greatness of history, you see that they were the ones who had produced everything for the world. When you look at all the greatest civilizations of this world, you're looking at these people who produced that. When you're looking at a people who are God's chosen people, and you're looking at these people who you have all of these bad definitions and descriptions for, that's almost impossible to accept. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to recreate the narrative. We have to change the narrative. We have the power to be able to do so. So we'll change that narrative and say, no, 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 no. That's us that we're talking about, not them. Because there's no way that these people who we've already gave this very diabolical definition to and have only bad descriptions of, is nowhere in the world they can be God's chosen people. And so what? We're going to steal that inheritance. The minister said one time, and my leader, the Honorable Ben Ami, said also, that when you take, I don't know if you ever heard the story about the lie and the truth, that the lie and the truth went swimming one day. The lie convinced the truth to take off all of his clothes so they can be able to get into the water. When the truth took off his clothes and got into the water, instead of the lie taking off his and getting into the water, the lie put on the truth's clothes and started moving around. Now you have the lie that's dressed up, well-dressed as the truth. It's beautiful. It sounds good. It looks like it can make sense, because the only information that you're providing about a specific people, this is the lie providing this information about specific people, that these people have been downtrodden. They're at the lowest, wherever you look at in the world today, they're the lowest in every society. Even in Africa, they're the lowest. And you have all of these people coming from outside, taking over all the natural resources on the continent itself. They're the lowest people on. So there's no way that these people can be the ones who have been chosen. We know that that's not a fact. That's not true. Otherwise, why are they so low then? Otherwise, how is it they're not able to produce anything? Otherwise, why when we go into their neighborhoods, there's so many drugs and this and that. Not to even mention the fact that we never brought those things into our neighborhood, but
that's right.
It came in there somewhere, because we're not importing none of that. We don't produce guns. But somehow it made it to our neighborhoods. Well, somebody has been doing this. It's been, like I say again, this has been a well thought out plan by all of our enemies to keep us at the bottom so that we would never be able to reclaim our throne once again. And so the reason why they want it because of the greatness that comes along with it. They want it because of the prestige. They want it because this is the promise. So if I could be able to somehow get over on you, Caleb, and convince you that that inheritance that you have, that home, that money, that vehicle, if I can convince you that it's worth nothing, right? Then I can take over. I know it's worth, but so long as you are not aware of what it's worth, I'm good. But as soon as you wake up to what the value is of what you have as an inheritance, their time is up. That's why it always says that the rise of Jacob is the fall of Esau. That means that they can't both happen at the same time. Somebody got to be up like a seesaw on a seesaw for the other person to be down. All it takes for us, guess what? On a seesaw, all it takes for you is to just give a quick jump with your legs and get up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all it takes. They're working on our backs. The entire world is operating on the axis of people of African ancestry, lying about everything, stealing everything, looting, raping our communities, raping our continent, because they understand the value of all of these things. But we don't understand the value of these things. We don't understand our value. So because we don't understand our value, that it makes it easy for other people to be able to just come along and just take it. How many people have you heard? How many people do you hear, is becoming more prevalent now? But beforehand, how many people did you hear saying that we are the chosen people? We are God's chosen people. Now, we're not saying that other people aren't, because, it was a mixed multitude of people coming out of Egypt. We went in 70 souls, came out 430 years later as 2 million souls. A mixed multitude of a whole bunch of people. Now, I don't know who was, and then at the same time, we went and we intermarried with a lot of other cultures. That was one of the problems. We went and we, brought women from here and brought, so it's possible that a lot of other people also part of that inheritance. But we're the only ones who are not coming to the bank and claiming what's ours. So long and until we show up to the bank and say, all right, we're here. Who are you looking for? You see that name on there? That's me. That's me.
Yeah.
But we never showed up. And so until we show up, hey, anybody, they know how you look. They know who they're supposed to be seeing. But if you don't ever show up, then anybody coming running behind you and say, hey, sir, this is your inheritance. Nobody doing that. Anybody doing that?
Man, brother, you have blown my mind during this current time, right? We have everybody saying free Palestine, right? And we have Iran and Israel going at it. Of course, Donald Trump in America putting their hands into things as usual, funding Israel. What are your thoughts, and how did we get to this point right now of rumors of wars between Iran and Israel and also of Palestine against Israel? How do we get to, I would say, this current boiling point right now?
So I want to frame the conversation in such a way where it could be understood, right? Because sometimes, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation moving around about it all, right? But I want to frame it in a way where we can be able to see ourselves in the picture. You see, because when we say Israel is in northeastern Africa.
Yep.
When we talk about the children of Israel came from Abraham, who was of a Sumerian identity, right? And then he was the one who carried the seed in order for the promise to then be passed on, not only just to him and his children, but in his seed was all of the nations of the earth to be blessed. So it was a responsibility that we had as the children of Israel, right? And then those children of Israel, those 12 tribes of Israel, were the tribes who intermingled with all those tribes that came out of Egypt alongside them, and all those Canaanites who were there as well in the land of Canaan. So we're talking about people of African ancestry, right? The only thing that separates, because people have this concept also of Israel being in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Israel is in northeastern Africa, and the only thing that separates Israel from mainland Africa is the man-built Suez Canal that started in 1859 and ended in 1869. Israel sits on the African tectonic plate geographically. The language that was spoken here was an Afro-Semitic language, Hebrew. So when we talk about Israel, these are our people. But again, all throughout, there have always been other powers that had come in and that had taken our inheritance because of things that we did or didn't do. We had the Assyrians, 721 BC. We have the Babylonians, 586 BC. We have the Romans, 70 AD. We had the Arabs, 635 AD. We had the Crusades up until 1099. We had the Mamluks. We had the Ottoman Empire. We had the British. We have Israel. So there have been powers who have been in charge of our inheritance for a long time because we didn't step up to the plate to do so. And so I want to frame the conversation, first of all, so we can be able to understand what we're talking about, this plot of land, these people who are here. Secondly, when we talk about Israel and Palestine, or Israel and Palestinians, it's important that we don't just frame it as white European peoples and brown oppressed peoples. Because in Israel, you have more than 500,000 people of African ancestry who reside in here in Israel, whose birthright is Israel, okay, who've been here for generations, who could be able to show consistency. When there's a video that was moving around from 1920s of Jerusalem that you see everybody looking like me and you.
Wow. Wow.
Right? There's a video there. But then you look also on the Palestinian side, you have the brothers and sisters who are called Afro-Palestinians or Afro-Bedouins, who are not so loved and welcomed by the Palestinians either. So now we're not getting a lot of love on Israel's side. They're not getting a lot of love on the Palestinian side. And since the beginning of this current war, it started on 7th of October, there have been more than $2 billion on Israel's side and $1 billion, but $2 billion on the Palestinian side. Not one of those dollars came to any of the African communities in Israel that was raised for Israel. And not one of those dollars were given to the Afro-Palestinian brothers and sisters in what is called the West Bank or Judea and Samaria or in Gaza. So now that we understand that we have brothers and sisters who are involved on both ends of this conflict, you have brothers and sisters who identify with Israel, not with the government of Israel, but with the land of Israel, the people of Israel, and we repatriated back to our ancestral homeland. No, we're not in charge right now, but it also says in the Bible that I will overturn it until he whose right it is. And so nothing's going to be overturned if you're not in place to receive it. And on the Palestinian side, the brothers and sisters ain't getting no love because they're Africans, they're Afro-Palestinians. They're not like the, they're the Abids. They're the slaves. A lot of them were imported. This is part of that narrative. A lot of them were imported from Sudan and other places, right? To be the domestic workers for the lighter skinned Palestinians. So they're not really, on our level. It's a little better now, but they're not really on our level like that. So it's happening both in Israel and on that end. Now that we've said all of that, the conflict between Israel and Palestinian people has been going on for hundreds of years before the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948. What were the issues? There were two issues. The first issue was that you have a significant amount of European Jews who are migrating from Europe and from other places to Israel looking for asylum, right? Because of what they were experiencing in Europe. And then on the flip side of that, you have people who identify, well, they didn't they identify now as Palestinians, but previously they didn't. But these are people who migrated, a lot of them, from nearby countries as well, under the Ottoman Empire, from Egypt, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Jordan, looking for better options economically. Migration always been a thing in this area, right? So these were people who were coming from different areas, from different places. Now, you have these two peoples now clashing inside of Israel, because you have one side who's saying, okay, we want to establish a nation or a home for ourselves here on this plot of land. You have the other people who are saying, but this land belongs to us. So now you have two powers who are clashing with one another. Both of them are claiming our inheritance. And so it wasn't just Europeans who were coming to Israel. You, like I said, you had a lot of people of African ancestry who were Israelites who were still residing in Israel, who've been here for a long period of time. And so when the establishment of the state of Israel happened in 1948, even prior to that, the Palestinian peoples, they didn't want to be identified as Palestinian people, not necessarily, because what they were saying was that they were intricately part of the Arab world. And so you have the name Syria Palestina, right, that came actually from Hadrian in 135 BC after he put down what was called the Bar Kokhba revolt. From 132 to 135 here, you had the Bar Kokhba revolt of some of those Israelite people who were residing here, who were trying to revolt against the Romans. Once he managed to put down that revolt, then he changed the name of this region to Palestine or Palestina, right? And he changed the name of Israel, of Jerusalem, to Ilia Capitolina. Okay, so he changed these things in order to be able to, once again, to strip any identification of the children of Israel with this portion of land. And so the name Palestine was only a name that was actually adopted by the Palestinian people, starting from the establishment of the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1964. But prior to that, they identified as Arabs, and they wanted to be part of what was called Syria Palestina. So Syria and Israel, they wanted that to remain the same, right? Part and parcel. But they were saying that Palestine, if you look on coins today, you will see that there's some coins that say Palestine or Palestina, right? And then Aleph Yud or AI, Eretz Israel, right? So everybody who resided here, because the name of the region was called Palestine, everybody were considered Palestinian. It wasn't a unique identity for a specific group. Every Jews, Arabs, Bedouins, Afro-Palestinians, everybody was regarded as Palestinian who were residing here. So, so it's important for us to be able to shape this so people could really be able to understand. Everybody who resided here were considered Palestinians, right? Now, when they were talking about the division of the land, right, or what are called the partition plans, there were a few partition plans. There was a partition plan in, well, the first one, well, when you look at the Balfour Declaration from 1917, it was saying, to establish a national home for the Jewish people, right? But at the same time, that national home would have to ensure that the rights of the minorities are upkept, right? In 1937, you had what was called the Peel Commission. The Peel Commission, they reached a conclusion, the British, they reached a conclusion that because all of these revolts, right, and because the continuous clashes between the Arab peoples and the Jewish peoples, there was nothing they can be able to do to allow them to be able to live together in one unit. So they would have to separate the two, right? When they separate the two, one will give to the Jews, another will give to the Arabs. They both can establish their own national homes, however they see fit to do so. Not a problem at all, right? Then you have the white papers that said that we're going to now limit the amount of migration of Jews to Israel to a small portion, about 50,000 or so, over a few years period of time so that they wouldn't become the minority here. But the Arab peoples, they never wanted to accept any of the partition plans. The reason why they didn't want to accept any of the partition plans because they were saying, hold on now, first, this is our entire land. It really doesn't matter to us that even in Jerusalem, in Sephat, and Tiberias, and other places like these, there was a majority of people who identified as Jews. Right, there was a majority of these people who, and these were the largest cities. So they, and so they were saying, okay, no problem. Well, we'll fix it in such a way where we would we'll establish our country or our homeland in most of the places that are majority people who identify as Jews. And then the Arabs could do it in the other places where majority of the people are Arab. They didn't want to accept any of the partition plans. So then you had wars. You had a war in 1947, 48, right? That war then led to more land being taken from the Palestinian people because that war, per a lot of the historians, it was a defensive war. And so according to international law and defensive wars, you're able to take territory. Not an offensive. You can't go on the offensive to take people's land. But if you are in a defensive war and you take some territory, then it is what it is. You should never start it anyway. So you have to deal with whatever, the consequences are for that. From 1948 until 1967, the Gaza Strip was under the rulership of the Egyptians. Right, because after the War of Independence for Israel, or what they call on the other side, the catastrophe or the Nakba for the Palestinians, they decided that what we're going to do now is that these are the Arab peoples, right? We're going to take over this portion of land. We're going to take over Gaza. That was in the hands of the Egyptians, and then the West Bank that they call today the West Bank, right? That was in the hands of the Jordanians. So effectively, if we're just looking at historical fact, there was never an entity or country or state that was called Palestine prior to the establishment of the state of Israel. It didn't exist. The only thing that was here was what is called the British Mandate of Palestine. That British Mandate started in 1920, and it was finished prior to the establishment of the state of Israel in 1947. So that was 27 years of a mandate, the British Mandate of Palestine. Outside of that 27 years and the portion of years prior to that, when Hadrian then took over the land after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 132 to 135, that short period of time, that was the only time that this region was ever called Palestine. So it's not a 2,000-year continuation of just this thriving state that somebody came and just took over. It didn't happen like that. It didn't happen like that. And then from 1967, that was another war that, again, that war led to more lands being taken again. It's a preemptive war once again, according to a bunch of historians. That the Gaza Strip then was taken from the Egyptians, and Israel then occupied it. The West Bank was taken from the Jordanians, and then Israel then occupied it. So prior to that, it wasn't in the hands of the Palestinians anyways, never. But now it was under the hands of Israel. And so now, from this point going forward, now we're talking about the occupation of these two lands that were never in the hands of these peoples anyways. So nobody ever talked about those things. Now, going forward, from 1967 and forward, Israel had great relations with the African people and with African states, right? Some of the first states to actually recognize Israel, by the way, one of the first states to recognize Israel in 1950 was Iran.
I didn't know that. Wow.
That was one of the first states. But outside of that, and by the way, the person who was actually responsible for negotiating the ceasefire in 1949 was actually a brother who was African American called Dr. Ralph Bunche.
He's a legend. Yep. Ralph Bunche.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Ralph Bunche. He was the one who was responsible for the negotiation of the ceasefire between the two sides. Now, going forward, right, Israel had relations with a lot of Arab countries, a lot of African countries until when? Until 1973. What happened in 1973? There was what was called the Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War was another war that Israel fought with on the day, Yom Kippur is the holiest day, not only for Jews, but also for Israelites. That's a day that we fast, right? It's a day that we afflict our souls. It's a day that we are totally disconnected from anything. It's a time of reflection. A war began on that day. When everybody is fasting, a war began. Israel won the war again. But what happened then between 1967 and 1973, Israel then was not seen anymore as the David in the situation and with Goliath all around, because they managed to put off 7 armies almost, right? Internally and outside, 100 million people almost in 6 days, in a 6-day war. And then again, win a war that they didn't even anticipate, they didn't expect in 1973. Now they became the Goliath. And the Palestinian people now became the David, the small one, right? Okay. Now, part of what happened there was that, and you tell me if I'm giving you too much history.
Nah, you good.
Okay.
You good.
All
Hey,
right.
I love history, man. Hey, I'm just sitting back listening. I loved it.
Okay. Now, part of what happened then during that period was that you had the Soviet Union that was getting stronger, and you had the United States of America that was also getting stronger. So now you have 2 hegemonic powers, right? You have 2 powers who are now fighting for control in certain regions after World War II. Because World War II then caused the Germans to be taken down, right? The British became very weakened because they had their arms all over the place, and they couldn't upkeep that. So America then was on the rise. With you have the Industrial Revolution, right? That caused later on for America, because of all the development they had there, to then be on the rise. These 2 powers were fighting for power in this region because, on one hand, America was trying to continue to spread what they call this liberal democratic idea. On the other side, the Russians or the Soviets, they were looking to export this idea of socialism, communism, they call it, in other places in the world. So they're now fighting for control. Now Israel, in this entire area, northeastern Africa, where some people call, the Middle East, it's a very strategic place. It's strategic. Why? One, because it has direct outposts to Africa, to Europe, and to Asia. Then they built the Suez Canal going right through, so you can be able to have a straight shot instead of going all the way around Africa and then coming out on the other side to the Far East, right? That they call the Far East, India, and all those other countries. You now can go straight through, and that saves you a lot of time. So this was major in terms of trade. So they wanted to be the ones who are in control of these areas, and that was, by the way, one of the reasons why there was a war also in 1956 between Israel and Egypt and some of the other countries, because Egypt was effectively trying to close down, shut down, right, what was called the Straits of Tiran. They wouldn't allow, because that was 90% of Israel's trade going through there. We're not going to allow that to happen any longer. We're going to nationalize the Suez Canal. So, let's forget the fact that they built this man-made Suez Canal, disconnected Africa from the homeland. Now everybody is fighting for it geopolitically. So the Soviets wanted to be involved, and so one of the ways that they were able to then gain the hearts of a lot of the people, mainly in the U.S., was that we understand what oppression is. We understand what colonization is. We understand what persecution is. We understand all of these concepts. We understand what when you come and somebody takes over your land and now you're the underdog. We understand those things. So what was part of the Russian propagandist idea to let's package this case that's happening in Israel in such a way where it could be able to speak to the hearts and the minds of the people, specifically in America, African Americans and African countries. We are going to word it in a very specific way in words that they understand. So we're going to say this is colonization. This is oppression. This is degradation. This is all of the other things. Now, not to mention the fact that you just had a continuation of 600 years almost of foreign rule of Arab powers, the Ottomans and the Mamluks. They're not native to here. Before that, approximately 400 years before that, you had the Arab invasion in 635 of people who were not native to here. And so, but as far as they're concerned, because we've held on to it for so long, now it's our inheritance. We deserve this now. So if you try to take it, that's a problem. Not only is that a problem, it also clashes with our belief. Because one of their beliefs in this area with some of the radical Islamic powers is that whatever lands that they ever conquered is now called a waqf. This is a holy, what they call it, a holy inheritance. Funny enough, we talk about inheritance. This is a holy inheritance for them. It's the waqf, right? Now, not only are these lands waqfs, according to these radicals also, there is a responsibility for them to bring everybody under this idea of Islam, according to what they believe, according to how they believe it to be. Not classic Islam, according to how they believe it to be. And how is that going to be done? Well, you have all of what is called the Dar el-Islam, right? Which are all of those possessions that had already been taken. These are already in our hands, right? Because mind you, all these you call North African countries, Morocco and Egypt, and you call them part of the Arab world. Yep. But these places have their own indigenous peoples to them. But they were conquered. So it was nothing different between that and European colonization and imperialism. It's the same thing. They're just fighting each other, right? But then you have also Dar el-Harb. Dar el-Harb means that those lands that are not yet in the possession of Islam, as we view it, they have to be conquered. And how are they going to be conquered? They're going to be conquered through jihad. What is the foundation of this jihad? El-Harb, the sword, coercion, by force. You see? And so propaganda said, okay, well, we'll just use this in such a way we could be able to speak to the brothers and sisters in America. This was part of the reason why you had the Black Panthers who were supporting it. Brother Malcolm who was supporting it. Angela Davis, a lot of other people who were supporting it. And I understand why they were supporting it. One, because they probably wasn't even aware of the fact that our presence here, right? They probably wasn't really thinking about the fact that Israel is northeastern Africa and we're right here. We're caught in the midst of it politically and everything else, right? They probably wasn't thinking about the fact that just prior to that, a few hundreds of years ago, this place was also conquered. It was under the rulership of others, right? And so when you properly contextualize it, then now you're able to see all of the loopholes that nobody talk about. Everybody's going to really just talk about the things that are really, going to allow them to, to be the ones that seem like they're the underdog. They're the ones who've been done wrong. Not to say that a lot of things haven't been done wrong, because I believe in my heart that there should be a general change, and not just turning over lands to people, but the mindset. Because you turn over the land or land to people with the same type of mindset, they're just a different skin hue, or there's just a different, they just have a different ideology, or they have a different culture, or they have a different, religion, but they carry themselves in the same way. Then what's the difference? It's more of the same. It's more of the same. So we find ourselves today, because I can go through it, but I'm not going to belabor the point. If you have more questions on that, I can deal with it specifically. But we found ourselves today in a place where all of this history have come kind of to a boiling pot, where every generation, instead of really searching for a proper solution that could be able to allow us all to live in peace and in harmony, on one hand, there are people who would never ever accept the fact that there is, a state of Israel is here. We can never accept that. This is part of our inheritance as far as we're concerned. So we can never accept that, politically or nothing. Then this is written in the Charter of Hamas from 1987, right? That's on one hand. On the other hand, you have Israel that's like, look, there's nowhere in the world we're ever going to give establish a Palestinian state along what's called the 1967 borders. Why? Because, it just doesn't make sense. It's indefensible. Why? Because they're on the border now is closer to the West Bank. But if you bring that border into 1967, right, you're going to be right in the heart of Israel. Now, not only are you going to be right in the heart of Israel, you're going to be also in a very strategic point because you're going to be on a mountain looking down into everything that's in the valley. And if you know anything about military strategy, that puts you at a high point. So Israel is saying that's never going to happen, especially not after what we've experienced since Hamas has come into power in 2005 in Gaza. So if they're launching rockets into the heart of Israel from Gaza, and then they managed to breach the borders and come in on October 7th, not saying it will happen, but if it does happen, then now they're in the heart of the city and it takes them 20 minutes to get to Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, 20 minutes to get down to Tel Aviv, 10 minutes to get to Ra'anana, 15 minutes to get to. So if they launch rockets now, they're not launching rockets from one side all the way. They're right there in the heart of the city, almost. So that's indefensible. That's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. And like I say again, there are people on the other side that could never accept it, because if they go to a two-state solution, then that means that they're now effectively accepting the fact that Israel exists. Mm. And if they in Islam, they say that in the radical Islam of these organizations, they say that nobody have the right, no individual have the right to give up on inherited land. You don't have the right to sign an agreement with nobody about land that was in the hands of Islam. Who gave you that right? You can't do that. So now, what is the only other solution? Let's fight it out. We'll fight it out to the death. And so now you look and you see that there's continuation of this conflict for years and years and years. Is there a solution somewhere in I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. Politically, I don't think so. I can't see how those two ideologies could ever be able to make amends. I don't see that happening. And in terms of Iran, the only reason why Iran and Israel actually started clashing in 1979 after the overthrow of the Shah and Ayatollah Khomeini coming into power was because one of their desires were total hegemony in the region. And so they viewed Israel after you're looking at the wars and you're seeing how Israel is continuing to be strengthened. And you also see that Israel has the backing of the United States of America. So effectively, there's nothing you can really do about them. They're the only ones that's preventing you from being able to be a hegemonic power. So then what do you have to do? You have to take them out because they're the problem. They're the issue. So we're not going to go to a war with Israel head on. What we'll do is we'll fight the war through proxies. So we're going to prop up Hezbollah in the north. We're going to prop up Hamas in the southwest. We're going to prop up the Houthis in the southeast. We're going to prop up these militias in the northeast, Syria, Iraq, right? We'll let them do the job. We'll continue to fund them. We'll continue to provide weaponry. We'll continue to provide them, with the military training, and we'll fight the war through them. But now, post October 7th, where Hezbollah has been exceptionally, well, they were strong beforehand, but now they've been weakened to a point where they're almost no longer, a threat. They took out all of the primary leadership, both militarily and politically. Hamas in Gaza, I mean, you see the destruction and the death. It's a tragedy. It's really a tragedy. But you're gonna just keep fighting, for what? For what reason? They said now they're prepared to, and some of them said, Hamas leadership, that if they knew that this type of destruction was going to be caused as a result of what they did on October 7th, they probably wouldn't have done it. Some of them are now saying that, if part of the reason why this war is continuing is because they refuse to give up the hostages and they refuse to leave Gaza and not to be a governing power there anymore, so they're prepared to do so. But I'm saying after all of this, it took all of this, their death and destruction. The Houthis, every now and then they may shoot one missile, which is still crazy, into the heart of, and then all those militias in Syria. I mean, the Syrian Assad regime was toppled, and so now you have a different regime there. So now all of the proxies who Iran was fighting through are no longer able. So now it's head to head. It's like, I'm gonna send my guys and you're gonna send your guys, and then we're gonna fight it out. We both gotta show up. You show up, I show up. Now it's both of the big dogs, right? And one of the things that Iran wanted to do in order for them to be able to really strengthen their position was to have nuclear weaponry, because that would allow them also to be able to, again, to exert this type of power in the region. Israel said, look, y'all threatening to kill everybody. So I'm not sure that we want those nuclear weapons to be. Now, whether they exist or they don't exist, I don't know. But what I do know is that I live in Israel. I don't live in Iran. I don't live in America. If I lived in different places, I may have a different outlook on things. But because I live here, my family is here, my wife is here, my baby is here, my community is here. Because I'm an Israelite, my inheritance is here. I don't see a lot of these organizations like other people from the outside may see them. I don't view these organizations as freedom fighters and all of those things as other people may see them. I see them as seeing me, which they do, as just as much a target as anybody else, just by virtue of me living in Israel. Did I choose to be here? No, I was born here. But it's my inheritance, it's my birthright to be in my land. But no, as far as they're concerned, no, you are just as much a problem as anybody else. And so you're part of a colonial outpost or power. You're part of a power that is oppressing Palestinian people. But then I'm saying, hold on now, we have a beautiful relationship with our brothers and sisters in the Afro-Palestinian world and community. We have a beautiful relationship with our brothers and sisters up in Jericho. We go visit them. I go visit them often. We have a beautiful relationship with our brothers and sisters in East Jerusalem. We have a beautiful relationship with our brothers and sisters down in Rahat and in Segef Shalom and in other places. So I don't know what you mean when you say that we are part of a colonial power and we're oppressing, because these are our brothers and sisters. And they're being oppressed as well by the people who are saying that they're being oppressed by other people. You see how deep it goes? Right? It goes deep. But not only that, and I'll end with this, and I'll turn it back over to you. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, these other militias are no different than organizations that are on the continent now causing destabilization within the entire continent, like Al-Shabaab, like Al-Qaeda Sahel, like Boko Haram. Now, these people, some of these people are people who look like me and you. They're just as dark as you and I. They're African people. But it's not about the people who's doing it. It's about the ideology that's leading it. And whether that ideology is being led by people who are of me and your skin hue, or others, that don't make no difference. It's happening. These people are all working for one cause. And it has nothing to do with toppling and all the things they say. They're working for one cause. And the cause is that they would like to see world domination of this ideology that they have. And they're prepared to do whatever is necessary to be able to forcibly cause that to happen through the sword. Nigerians ain't did nothing to people, so they oppress Nigerian brothers and sisters oppressing somebody. Our brothers and sisters down in Chad, in Niger, our brothers and sisters down in the Congo, our brothers and sisters down in Sudan. They all are also part of, no, these organizations have the same ideology. You just take them and put them in other places with other people, but it's the same ideology. And that's the problem. That's the issue. That's the issue. And so long as that's prevalent, we're going to see these things continue. I mean, we see how much death and destruction is going on the continent. How many people are talking about that? Nobody, almost. Israel and Palestine, or the Palestinian Authority, can't be more important than 500,000 people dying in Sudan. There's nowhere in the world that you can say that you are very much pro or against the starvation of people, and you have 2 million children just in Sudan alone that are starving right now. How many people do you see talking about that? You talk about destruction, you talk about displacement. You have 20 million people who are displaced. 20 million people who are displaced right now just in Sudan alone. So, and nobody's talking about that. You don't see no protest about it. You don't see no major, a financial rounding up for it. You don't see no major UN resolutions against it. It's almost never covered. So the question is then, is it political? What you're talking about? Or is it really humanitarian? Because if it was humanitarian, then there's no way that you could totally ignore one and put all of your eggs in the other basket. Impossible. You would have the same sympathy right here that you have right here. You may be closer to this because I don't know. You may have people who's involved. You may work with an organization that's assisting. I can understand that. But if you're just an average human being and you say that this is way more important and I'm going to ignore all the other ones, then I have to trust your integrity. I mean, I have to question your integrity. If you can ignore catastrophes in other places and say that this is the worst thing in the world, I really have to question your integrity. So that's just, and like I said, we can talk about that for hours. But I think I probably just talked about that for an hour or so.
You did. Brother, Ashriel, bro, this interview right here was so needed because, man, you were just extremely thorough. I need that. So, man, anytime that, you feel like, oh, I've been talking, bro, that's the point of this entire conversation is for you to give us all of this great information. So, man, you don't have to worry about that at all. First off, man, thank you for all of your time, too. You have been exceedingly gracious with your time. Thank you, brother, because I thoroughly just enjoyed this conversation. Very last question for you. What does the future of our people look like? And I would say, especially in Israel, because everybody sees, of course, all the media coverage, but I think that our people here in America, some know, but more need to know, hey, we have people that look just like us, came from America, from Chicago, all throughout America, and went to Israel, and they set up a beautiful establishment. What does the future of our people in Dimona look like to you in your own eyes?
The foundation, one of our mentors always said that there were 4 steps and stages in this process. Mm-hmm. The first generation came, the second generation remained. It is the responsibility of the third generation to maintain or to sustain so that the fourth generation and going forward could be able to maintain. If every one of these generations do their job, then we could be able to look down hundreds of years later and say that we managed to establish what we read about in the scriptures, about that feeble remnant reconnecting with our homeland after 400 years of enslavement, 2,000 years of exile, coming back, regaining our inheritance, putting ourselves back in position so that the God of Israel could be able to trust us once again. Because the only reason why we are always kicked out is because we turn our backs on the Holy One of Israel. There's something about the land of Israel that it will spit you out of here if you're not right. And so there have never been any powers that maintained way too long in this region and weren't spit out if they weren't doing right. So that's why I'm not even worried about, about the military might, because when you look at the book of Zechariah, it says that not by power, nor by might, but by my spirit, says the God of Israel. That means that there's another type of energy that is within this place, that as soon as you connect with that energy, it will allow you then to be able to move in a different manner, because now you are in tune once again with your identity. And so it will allow you then that those energies that are coming from different places will allow your body now to revitalize, and it will allow your spirit to move in a different way that will now reconnect with the soil of this land in such a way where it will produce to you all of its greatness, which hadn't been done in a long time because we have not been connected properly. And so the future of us going forward is that we built the foundation. We established the institutions. We established the idea. We see the model in work. We understand now how we could be able to establish something for ourselves that we are in total control of. Now it's just a matter of us being able to properly and fully sustain it, and then take that sustenance and replicate it in other places in the world so that our people could also be able to come back to that idea of a community, of communal living on the foundations of peace, of love, of gratitude, of family, of equality, of all things in common, of sharing. Those foundations now have been laid. So now it's just a matter of us being able to really take those and to just sharpen them. Yeah. So the future of us now is really dependent on what me and my generation are going to do, right? What you are going to do on that end. Now that we're connected, it is going to take, a joint effort from that side and from this side, because when you look on the back of the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, you had those two hands, one hand that was coming from the east, shaking the hand that was coming from the west, right? Working together in harmony for a greater purpose, so that we can be able to now provide something greater for our people that we can be able to look forward to. So I see the Dimona Foundation as that foundation now that's going to be used as a working model for how we could be able to once again take our destiny into our own hands. And so how it's going to look later on? Well, we're going to need to up a little bit on the health. Yeah, we did great. Now let's do greater, right? We've done good with establishing a community, as best as we were able to do, in the circumstances that we had. Now let's expand it a bit. Yeah. We had, a few thousands of people who are here in Israel living in the land. Now let's open up the way for others of our brothers and sisters to be able to also come home. We've managed to eradicate a lot of those ailments that our brothers and sisters were experiencing here, coming from America. Now let's take it back to our brothers and sisters there and help them now, right? We've managed to see what it looks like to have a community that people are working together for a greater good of the whole. A community, not a neighborhood. Now, there's a difference. We don't just live in the same proximity but everybody's doing it. We live in the same proximity, but we're looking out for each other. Right. We live in the same proximity, but we're working together for a greater cause. We live in the same proximity, but we also want good for our brother as we want for ourselves. And so we take that idea now and implement that in other places in the world. How much better will we be? This is a working model that I've never seen a drive-by shootout. Let's take that, let's implement it in places where we have the largest amount of drive-by shootouts in America. I haven't experienced crime. Every now and then you have some people who are, but for the most part, that's not nothing that is vested in our community. So let's take that to the places where we have brothers and sisters who are experiencing a high level of crime, and let's take that model and let's see if it could work there. Let's see if we take this vegan diet and implement it in places where our people are experiencing the highest level of osteoporosis, of high blood sugar, of obesity, of cholesterol. Let's see if we can take this working model. Let's see if we can be able to help them to kind of phase out of that. Let's see. Hey, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But let's see. So I'm saying that our responsibility now is to take what's already been established and to globalize it and to export it to our people, to open up the gates, to open up the way, to take this foundation and let this be the working model for wherever we are in the world. And so if we can manage to do that, then I'm sure that our ancestors and our pioneers are going to be absolutely appreciative and proud of what we do. It's up to us. The responsibility is on us. They did what they were going to do. This was the best they could do with what they had. We're not starting off behind like they did. We're starting off already with something in the hand. So we have to produce way more than what they did. They expect us to produce way more than they did because we have the means to be able to do so way more than what they had before. So we don't have an excuse. The people who left initially, who didn't really find themselves in Israel because they came from the luxuries of life in America to the hardships of Israel, of the Holy Land. I mean, just like, when our brothers and sisters left out of Egypt, they said, man, if this is what you was bringing us out to, we could have just stayed in Egypt.
Yeah.
I mean, we was better off as slaves as opposed to what's this? At least we have something to eat. The flesh pots of Egypt, at least we have somewhere to stay. At least we have somebody to go to complain about if something wasn't working out for us. We can put off on somebody else. But now here you go. You got us in the middle of the situation. Now we got to figure it out on our own. Man, I'm going back, man. Forget it. So I think that's, as a matter of fact, I know that's where we are. We have the means. We have the know-how. We have a working model. We have an example. The only thing that we don't have is a lot of experience, our generation. Right? Because we were born into it.
Yeah.
But they say that young men are for war.
Yes,
and old people are for counsel.
That's
you
right.
put those two together,
yes, sir.
we good to go, Doc.
Yeah.
So, we put the experience that they have. I'll finish with this. My mentor told me one time, Prince Asiel, he asked me one time, how old are you? I told him I'm 25. He said, no, you're not. I said, why you say that? He said, because I'm 70 something. I think he was 75 at that time. He said, I'm 75. You put my 75 years of knowledge, of understanding, of experience, with your 25 years of vigor, of desire, of excitement, you got 100 years of experience right there. So you're not 25 years, you are 100.
Yeah.
If you take what I got to give you. Mm-hmm. Caleb, if we take what they got to give us, we good to go. We good to go. I see the future as us taking what they have to give us and running with it, making it relevant for 2025, 2026, 2050, 2090. They did something that was relevant for 1996 or 1966, 67, 68, 1990, 2000, 2015, 2012, 2025. Now we take this new era that we're living in, we adjust things to how life is today. We're good to go, Doc. So let me just take this moment to share with you my appreciation for allowing me to be able to get on to share these moments with you, with our viewing audience, to have that chance to be able to share with them the good news from home. Not only is it from home, what we managed to do. And I'm looking forward to not only having these conversations, but to working together. We're looking for people who are desirous of working together. We may not even always agree on a lot of things, but at least what we can agree on is that the condition of our people is not the best. We want the best for our people. I bring my little bit, you bring yours, other bring theirs. We could work on something that could be able to be good and right for our people. But this is the first step in that. Sitting down, having a conversation as brothers. As they say, behold how good and pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. It's like precious ointment that on the head that ran down to the beard. It's precious. It's a great thing. It's a very needed thing. And so I appreciate you, my brother Caleb, for allowing me to spend these moments with you. And I'm looking forward to continuing to build on a foundation that me and you are laying now, because I know, it's only greatness that awaits us.
Oh yeah, and man, brother, from previous talks, this will not be our last conversation on camera. You already know I'm gonna have you back several times, man, because I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, connecting things from that historical perspective, geopolitical perspective to present times that's needed, man, especially from you, your voice actually being boots on the ground. On the way out, where can everybody follow you, keep up with Dimona? How can we donate to the movement? All of that good stuff.
Okay, so I mean, you want me to give you the links? Or you want to put the links in, or you want me to just mention it?
I'll drop the links actually. Send it to me and then I'll post it. I got you. I got you, man. Instagram, where can everybody follow you on there on social
Okay.
media? Look, hey,
So
I can make
on
that easier. Yeah.
all right, so on Instagram it'll be at ASHRIELMOORE. That's Ashriel Moore. ASHRIELMOORE.
Thank you, brother, so much. Keep up all the phenomenal work that you are doing, man. Stay safe, stay blessed. Once this is up, you already know I'm gonna share it with you. So, man, thank you so much again, brother. Much love.
Yes, yes, sir, my brother. Take care.
All
I
right.
got to run in here to the wife now.
Yes, sir. Hey, you take care of your wife, man. You have a good one. All right. You have a good evening.
Yes,
Peace.
sir. All right, peace.